Welcome to SQL Presents, everyone. We'll just give everyone a chance to join us, and we'll be back with you within about 45 seconds. In the meantime, enjoy some jazz. So welcome everyone to the latest SQL Presents A Coffee With. I'm Nick Andrews, Business Development Director at SQL. I've been in internal comms for more years than I care to remember. And the topic today around change is something that actually people were talking about when I first joined SQL a long time ago. We called it in those days business process reengineering. It's gone through a number of nuances since then. But each month we at SQL look at topics of interest to the internal comms, IT and HR communities. And we do share these conversations after the event on our website, so feel free to look at the transcript next week. And if you would like to sign up for future events, hello@SQL Group is the address to register with. As I said, today's topic is around business transformation and how communicators can meet the challenge of change. And I'm delighted to introduce to you today Kate Goodman. Kate, before we start, brief bit about yourself. Hello.
Hello, delighted to be here. I'm Kate Goodman. I'm Managing Director of the Good Comms Company, and I provide interim support internal comms to companies around the UK and the world. So I've worked for the RAC, Mawson Cause, Wosley and Natalie Dignity.
Okay, we'll start your interrogation in a minute. I'm just going to play a quick clip first. Cool. So, Kate, the HR Director magazine there was basically talking about change being continuous, and I guess you'd agree with that for any right-thinking organisation. But I believe at Dignity, change was something of a radical concept when you arrived. Is that correct?
It was a very radical concept, yeah. So we came in, I'd say we as a transformation team, 2 years ago, following a strategic review, and the business hadn't experienced any kind of change for over 20 years. The last big change it had was a new payroll system. So a whole group of contractors and coming with these big ideas to change the way they do things in the funeral industry, which is very traditional, was a big sell and very difficult for these people to understand at first.
Yeah, so as you said, Dignity, very traditional, and I think kind of was the organisation that had the claim to fame of burying Winston Churchill, I believe, amongst its clients. So very traditional, very established. Given that challenge, where did you actually start? Did you go full pelt into kind of communicating change all over the place, or do I suspect that you actually did a bit of insight first?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Nick. Yeah, we didn't go full pelting because that would have scared the horses a little bit, quite literally in some cases. So what we did is I came in and I reviewed what I had existing for internal comms, see if there was any channels that I could build on and start telling the story through. There wasn't any, so that was a challenge in itself. So I basically spent the first 3 months in a discovery phase. I went around talking to key stakeholders, getting to know them, getting to know their challenges, what their priorities were, what their fears were about transformation and what they knew about it. I surveyed colleagues, what sort of thing made them tick. Are they a Facebook person or are they a print media person? What sort of things did they like? What was the demographic? And that was really interesting. So that gave me loads and loads of really rich insight that I could build a comm strategy on. What had happened is before I joined, there had been an announcement to the city about transformation, and that announcement had just simply been emailed to the whole business. So there were a lot of people out there knowing it was coming, didn't know what it was, what it meant for them, whether their jobs were safe. So my first job, really, apart from getting all the insight, was about reassuring people and saying, we'll keep you informed, this is what we're going to do. So yeah, huge discovery phase and a lot of insight, and then I built the concept.
And you mentioned there in passing the demographic. It was an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think you found that, unlike many other blue chips, Dignity demographic was a little bit different, I guess, a little bit more aged than perhaps some other organisations you work for.
Our average age is 52, which means we've actually got people who are a lot older. We've got people who are casual workers who come in to be coffin bearers or drive the hearses, for example. People who attend the funeral on the day on behalf of the family, and often they're retirees. They're coming in to get a bit more extra cash in the pocket, or they're people like firefighters and policemen who again are sort of earning a few quid in between jobs. So yeah, from that point of view, they're not permanent employees, but they're casuals. They're also older. So, and having not been through a degree of change for a long time, it was quite difficult for those people to grasp it.
And did you find that, I mean, I'm probably generalising, did you find that because they were of a certain age, that they were more resistant to change, or did you find that when you'd kind of explained what you were trying to do, that they were open to it? What did you find in terms of your insight? Were there grounds for optimism, or were you kind of thinking...
There were grounds for optimism. There was caution, and people were cautious and a bit worried about it. But at the same time, when we said what our plans were... people can, thank goodness, we've been crying out for this for years.
Okay.
So actually, a lot of people really embraced it, and that was great because we could bring those people on board, and they were advocated for us. And I think that's really important. Whatever you do, anything really, is to bring your colleagues on board and don't let them be done to. They're the subject matter experts. A whole group of people who are transformation and comms experts and change experts. We didn't know anything about funerals. And it was really important that we protected that service and made sure that people still had a respectful and dignified send-off, despite the...
Sure. And given the fact that this transformation project had been announced to the city and it was all going to change, fantastic, a new brave new dawn, how impatient were people to see it? And did that mean you had to have some quick wins under your belt in terms of comms?
Yeah, people were impatient, actually, because by the time I came on board, that was 3 months prior. And well, what's happening? There's been 3 months and we've heard nothing. So what's going on? So, I was doing all the insight in the beginning and getting people on board. So what I had to do really is say, this is what, in a nutshell, this is what the plans are. This is what you can look forward to. But you're not going to hear about it overnight. You're going to hear about it in stages. It's a 3-year program, and reassurance is the big message. So this is not about job losses. It's not about people worried about their job. It's actually about growth and about taking the company into the 21st century. It's about reassurance messages. So getting those channels in place, very important. But initially it was simply emails. It was getting stuff put on notice boards. It was making sure that line managers were briefed so they could sort of reassure their teams.
And did you have a kind of branding or a kind of look and feel for that transformation in terms of making people aware this is important stuff?
I did, Nick. Yeah, I decided to, because when you're talking about transformation to people who haven't experienced any kind of degree of change in the workplace, the very word transformation is scary. So I wanted to sort of talk about transformation. I was going to tell the story. So we actually were quite influenced by Jim Collins, and so we used the tagline "Good to Great." Because we knew we were already good. We knew we were a great business. The reviews we get from customers is second to none. We couldn't ask for better FIFA reviews. We couldn't ask for better Trustpilot reviews. Our people are amazing people that do what they do for a little bit. But we knew we could be even better, and that's by getting the infrastructure right and making some efficiency within the business and making sure that we use all that subject matter expertise to make a more cohesive whole. So yeah, we said actually we're going to go from good to great, and people did buy into that.
Right.
And it actually created quite a bit of dialogue with people as well. Because they're going, well, hang on, we're already great. What are you talking about?
Really?
You could point out, actually, you are fantastic, don't get me wrong, but imagine how this could make a difference to the service you deliver to our clients in the time of need.
And did that kind of that message land well? Were there any kind of barriers to? Did people play devil's advocate and say, well, this is just another head office kind of initiative that actually doesn't mean anything to me? Or did you actually find that people embraced it fairly quickly?
No, people have really embraced it, and because there hadn't been any head office initiatives, so we weren't up against something that had failed before. Although people did wheel out of things, we did try this when 20 years ago, right? Another go, because things have changed a bit. So we had to do lots of hand holding for people because it was a worrying time and I hadn't been through it. So for our management group, we took them through change readiness training. My colleagues in HR did. They got completely brought up to speed on what change means, what the kind of physical and mental reactions are. So your amygdala hijack, your very chemical kind of reactions to change and why you might be experiencing this and what the change curve is. And we took colleagues through that as well, saying, it's completely natural to feel fear and to feel worry and to feel anxiety, but you will go over this. And actually, you might be at so many different points in that change curve at any one time about different things, and that's fine. Okay. We spent a lot of time telling that story through our communications and saying it's okay to feel worried about change, it's okay to go through these emotions.
Okay, so you did that. You told that story through your channels, but presumably you also had those kind of face-to-face meetings. And you mentioned HR. How big a partnership was it between you and HR?
Yeah, well, we're completely collaborated because there was not having gone through this change, and HR had to go through a massive transformation themselves. So we doubled the size of the HR team. They had to be brought up to speed on what the new modern techniques were and modern practices. And it went all the way through the organisation. So the organisation at Dignity is huge. It's nationwide. We've got 826 branches and 46 crematoria. Many of those are required as independents. So we had the problem as well that actually, although they had a Dignity badge on funeral director branch, they didn't feel like Dignity. They were just somebody who they still felt like Joe Bloggs and Sons. So that was another challenge we had.
So how did you actually get out there physically? Did you go a tour around the country? Got a T-shirt and everything?
Yeah, it was Kate on tour. Yeah. So I literally went to every single region in the business and spoke to people as an individual. But then I also did a management roadshow. That was a couple of years ago. It was January, so a couple of months after I started. And we did a management roadshow in 3 key regions and invited all the senior and middle managers to those events to say, this is what transformation is. This is why we're advocating it. And I had business leaders there to advocate for it, so it wasn't just a comms thing. And this is some exercises to go through, and this is what you can expect, and this is what you can take back to your teams, and this is what's going to happen. This is how you're going to feel about it. That's fine, and this is how you can find out about things. So it was an all-day roadshow in 3 different regions, and that was really helpful. And part of that was saying, actually, you need to communicate with your team. So that was a fairly new concept as well. So important to talk to your people. So yeah, it's really starting from scratch.
So you mentioned it's not just a comms thing. So I mean, I'm guessing getting those senior execs, the leaders on board was really crucial.
It was absolutely crucial. I mean, luckily they were bought into the strategy, so that's absolutely fine. But I had to convince them that actually talking to your people, not holding things back, which is what they traditionally had done, whether it's through a fear of worrying people or just keeping things to themselves or not seeing the need. I had to say, actually, you've really, really got to be honest with people and say, we're not going to get it right all the time because no one's infallible. We need to be telling that story. You need to be getting out there and being more visible because senior leaders weren't visible. And so we had our senior leaders as part of the transformation program ended up being business leads for each work stream. So they became the visible face of. We had, for example, one of our funeral regional managers was the work stream lead for IT, working with the project manager experts that have been brought in. So they were advocating it and they were learning on the job, and that meant that they were. So that meant they were able to sort of tell the story and be involved right from the off and have that input.
Okay. And how did they work with the line managers, particularly in a nationwide organisation? I presume those line managers and the regions were equally as important, if not more. And how did
Yeah,
you work with them as well?
absolutely. Well, I created an a dial-in. There was a dial-in message for line managers.
All
So
right.
knowing that people were on shifts and we're a 24/7 organisation, we created a dial-in message and people could listen to that at any time they wanted, and we recorded that and put it out there for them as well.
That was pre-recorded, yes?
Yes, yeah. But actually, no, it was a live recording, so people could ask questions at the end as well if they wanted to. But we recorded that, and people could come back to us.
And how often was that produced?
Every month to start with.
Oh, okay, fine. What about some of the channels? You mentioned some quick wins. What other channels did you have apart from the pre-recorded dial-in? You used to mention email. What else did you have?
Yeah, there was email. We also introduced town halls. Obviously, that worked better for head office colleagues.
Tell me about the town hall incident you had when you said to people, "Let's go and have a town hall." Do you remember?
Oh gosh, it was hilarious. Yeah, it's a bit of a learning curve, and I bring it up. It's really funny. We went our head office in Sutton Coldfield was actually just a few doors down from Sutton Coldfield Town Hall. So when we said we're going to have a town hall, we here at this stage, people trotted up the road to the town hall. It was a bit of a learning, because then we had to say, actually, okay, we're not going to call it that anymore.
Okay, fine.
We're going to call it something completely different, because people were just trotting up to the town hall and got very confused. So
yeah,
we were learning actually where not to use jargon, because
exactly.
in our language, it might be usual business language, it isn't always in somebody's vernacular.
No, I've got visions of everyone going across the town hall asking for their cup of tea and a biscuit.
Basically that. So yeah, we had to bring them back down the road.
Okay, fine. So town halls, or whatever we want to call them, emails, dial-in. What else did you?
We created a newsletter. So that was a transformation newsletter. So people could look out for that. We introduced posters, and we also spent a lot of time building a website. So the website was. It actually came into its own during COVID, but that was set up as well, because 50% of our colleagues don't have email, have any connection to company systems. We really had to reach them. So the newsletter was designed to do that, and then the website was there to sort of make sure comms are out there in real time for people and accessible by people who aren't on email as well. So it's an extranet, really, rather than an
And as ever, how did you measure the effects of those channels? I mean, was there much uptake on the website? Did people use it daily, or just dip in when they wanted, or how'd that work?
It depends, really. If you've got a big news item or a big ticket thing, we'll get more spike in traffic. We see a big spike in traffic when we send the newsletter out, because it links to those stories, like a little teaser. And video always works exceptionally well. Video has been a massive success story for us with this organisation.
Sorry, how did you use video to tell the stories? What kind of things did you use video for? Because that's interesting.
Well, because we wanted to sort of show people how it is a long journey, we actually did what does 2022 look like? So that was going to be the end point of transformation. So we looked at, actually, it's 2018 now, as it was, and this is what the problems are now, and this is you've got a leak. Who do you call if you've got a leak in the branch? What happens if you're trying to onboard somebody and you're having all these issues? So we created an animation that would show, actually, these problems were all solved in 2022 and how much easier your job is as a line manager, for example. So videos work really well, but always telling that story. I think, if a picture can tell 1,000 words, a video can tell 10,000. So I'm a big advocate of video, and we've really seen a lot of engagement with video.
A lot of transformation projects I've seen in the past do rely on a lot of email, a lot of words, and they tend to get a bit lost in the kind of the multitude of channels out there. So video, you think, has a real cut through?
Absolutely, it did for this audience, and I was worried because of technologically they weren't very advanced, and so right back at the beginning we were having to coach people on how to use Outlook, how to use email, how to invite in, why you should need an agenda for a meeting. So we had to go really, really back to quite fundamental basics at the start of transformation. So I was a bit worried that they wouldn't connect with video because it was quite advanced for them, but actually they did, and they really, really loved it. And we've had brilliant engagement with it, and that's continued. And we've invested quite a bit in video, actually. Okay. And I think that the more words you have, people haven't got the attention span. They're busy. They're sort of conducting funerals, or they're in head office, they're doing accounts. People haven't got the attention. So all I'm a wordsmith, let's tell a story in different ways.
So you were part of the transformation team. Did you find that transformation, the senior people in that team were worried that the lack of words, if you like, meant the seriousness of the message wasn't getting through, or did they kind of buy into what you
No,
kind
they
of
bought
suggested?
into it because I was part of that senior team. So I always knew what was going on. I had a really good helicopter view. I was joined up with the external comms team and PR team and the marketing team as well. So I was in countless meetings every week, but it was really great. It gave me a really good insight into what was going on in the business, and that meant that I could plan effectively as actually team member over here. I know you want to launch this new initiative, but we've got something on going over here, and actually we've got to wait a bit because there's too much to do.
So you were able to help shape the communication by being part of the team rather than being told, here's some comms, go and release it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I made it very clear at the beginning that I'm not a broadcaster.
Okay, fine. So,
and I always tell people comms is not big about being a postbox.
No, exactly.
A postman pad. So
no, absolutely. But I guess that's quite unique as a comms person being part of that transformation team, or do you think that's something that is increasingly prevalent?
I think people are going to see more and more of it. I think, especially actually during COVID, I think COVID's probably been, I hate to say a blessing, but it's been internal communicators, because CEOs and C-suite has really seen the value of it. And the fact that actually, if we hadn't have had professional internal communicators out there during the pandemic, and this is the case with Goodman as well, then they'd have been absolutely stuck. And we've been able to shape the message, we've been able to advise, and we've been able to sort of consult with them and get, because we're the subject matter experts on communications, we've been able to get that out there in the right way possible.
So you mentioned COVID, you also mentioned just a bit earlier about 2022 being the end point for the transformation projects as such. How have those two combined to either derail it or kind of increase the life cycle? Is change now part of the BAU Dignity, or what's the score at the moment?
It kind of is. I mean, unfortunately, COVID sort of put a bit of a pause button on the transformation. So 2022 is looking optimistic now. And it's changed the business in ways that you couldn't imagine. Stuff that would have taken months or years to change took a matter of weeks or days because it had to. So actually, we found the business who was quite reluctant to adapt or didn't know how to adapt managed to really, really quickly. And actually, I've seen the benefit of that. So things like rolling out technology to people, making sure people could work from home, and actually before that was considered impossible. Actually, that's worked really well. And now the business is thinking, well, do we actually have to have people in the office all the time? Can we get people? So actually, COVID itself has been transformative, which means that if we do go back to the transformation program, it'll probably have a slightly different slant on it.
And is it good, therefore, that you started this transformation program before COVID, that some of the things you already embedded were able to be used in COVID and you could prove its worth?
Yeah, absolutely. Without the website, without the newsletter, without those comms channels, we'd have been really, really stuck. So what we did at the very beginning is send a letter out to everybody's homes saying, the Good to Great, the website is where we're going to have all the COVID communications. If you haven't registered, please do so now. This is where we're going to be. Because at the time, at the beginning, it was relentless. It was message after message. And trying to control that against all the messages coming from government, and what it meant for funerals, and what it meant to tell clients, what it meant for us PPE-wise, trying to find PPE for people. All of these questions were coming in. We didn't furlough anybody, but people were still asking questions about finances and what it means for them, and if they've got childcare issues. We had to have a really, really strong channel, and thankfully the website really performed well for us, and people stuck with that.
So it sounds like change is kind of BAU for Dignity now. What are the lessons you've learned along the way in terms of this particular project? And actually, I guess, what would you have done differently? I mean, I'm sure there were some hiccups along the route.
Yeah, there were. So there was some, but you learn. And I would say there's never a failure. It's just a learning point. So, there's some things that have stopped along the way. So the dial-ins I mentioned earlier, we stopped them after about 6 months because we weren't really getting the engagement with that. And actually, we found a better way of doing it. So face-to-face always worked better. We had a management conference that went down exceptionally well, and actually it was worth 10 of those dial-ins, because in the end we were just telling the same story over and over, and that got boring. Other learnings, you can't expect everybody to engage or get the message first time. You have to tell the story over and over and over again.
Do you have a target in terms of how many people you think will embrace change or this transformation? Do you think there's always going to be, say, 10% of people who just won't come along with you? And if so, what do you do about those people?
Well, I think you need to concentrate on the people that will come along with you, because they're the ones that will influence. If you concentrate too much on your negative detractors, you're giving them all the energy, and it's a bit like the Dementor from Harry Potter. And I don't think we so concentrate on the people who will come with you. And actually, one of the things that was really well for us is getting those colleagues who are in the business, proper real life people that people knew, doing all the ranges and embalmers and all the rest of it, people who are in the business who advocated for us because they could see the benefits. And in the end, when we had that dialogue going, of creating that dignity community on the website, with colleagues talking to each other from all ends of the country, and they were able to advocate and discuss and have that discourse, which they weren't ever able to do before. And that's worked brilliantly for us. And if I could have got that up sooner, I would have done.
Sure. A question has flooded in. Someone's asked, Dignity is obviously a very unique organisation in terms of what it does, and it's fascinating to hear about it. Does transformation, the principles you talked about this morning, apply to any organisation, or do you have to adapt them for where you are?
I think you'll always have to adapt them, but I think in essence, those principles always remain the same. Always get your insights and do a discovery phase. So don't go all guns in blazing. Say for the first 3 months, you're probably not going to get much out of me because I'm out there discovering and talking to people. Always make sure that your channels are fit for purpose. There's no point in going into traditional organisation activity and putting up the latest busy app that's just going to fall flat on its face. What works? What sort of shift patterns do people do? What are their priorities? What are their demographics? Those are the questions you should always ask, and any transformation. And the ones that I always do ask whenever I go into a new client, because you might get slightly different answers, but in essence, those are the approaches that you need to take.
Okay, so it's very much about fact finding first before you rush in and do things, and understand the audience as ever. So insight, content, technology, as one agency once put it on their strapline. 3 top tips, Kate?
My 3 top tips. Well, first of all, I'd say absolutely honesty is always the best policy. So go in, people are going to be worried about their jobs. So up front, if you think, if there are going to be job losses, if there are going to be restructures, say so, because otherwise you're going to get people worrying, and you're going to have your performance and your productivity impacted, to be honest. Be honest if you get it wrong as well. So, you're not going to get it right all the time. So there was a couple of things that we tried out, didn't quite work out. That's fine. We've learned. We'll take those lessons and adapt. Second top tip is always collaboration. So I've talked a little bit about how bringing colleagues to be your advocates. They're your spokespeople, they're your subject matter experts. Never let people be done to, because then they're never going to buy into it. So collaborate, bring them in, talk to people, listen to them as well, and make sure that actually you break down those silos that exist in every single business, and bring people together into those workshops, those meetings, those focus groups, and have people work together. And then finally, my top tip is always measurement and insight. And I know it's something that can often go by the wayside, but I've made it my business to measure continuously through this, whether it's looking at how the website's performing, what stories perform well on the newsletter. I also do quarterly pulse surveys as well. So actually, what channels are working, what isn't, what could we do better, what's this feedback on such and such. And because of that, I've been able to adapt and learn as we go along. So that's how things have changed. We've adapted things. We've changed the look and feel of the newsletter. And that's great. You're never going to fail. You're always learning and adapting. So absolutely measuring insight the whole time. And from that, when we put all that together, you get a really great story, a really rich story to tell to people.
Okay, we've had a couple more questions, so we'll ask you those because I think they're interesting. First one is, how long into the programme did you have to wait to have the punchline messages, i.e. so often the readiness phase lasts too long, the real messages come later than planned? So how long was it before you actually had those key messages? And then the other question, as ever, from internal comms perspective, what sort of budget was available for the comms programme? You don't have to go into particular details, but
the readiness, because we had the key messages, because there's a strategic review before the transformation programme came in, so we were able to dilute that into actually these are our 7, 8 workforces. These are the task forces that we're going to work on. So we know we're going to talk about IT, we're going to talk about brand, we're going to talk about central efficiencies, for example. So we had those key messages, and we were able to bring that in straight away. As soon as I came in, we were able to bring them straight away. We've used those ever since. So really, really quickly. And the other question was about budget. Yeah, that was a really good one. So I came in thinking they've got no internal comms at all. I've got to get it all set up, and I've got no idea what I'm gonna what the budget is. So I actually came up with proposals. So there's a gold, silver, bronze proposal. I didn't know whether I had £1,000 a month or £10,000 a month. But and in the end, the budget flexed, because when things come in, as activities happen, the management conference, that's a separate cost. But if you can show return on investment to your CEOs as well, that meant I was able to get more to prove that it was working. But I think whether it's £1,000 a month or £10,000 a month, these principles always apply.
But does it make a difference to whether the budget is coming, a request of budget is coming from somebody working in internal comms or someone working on a transformation program?
Well, actually, yeah. Well, I was lucky because I was the internal comms person, and I sat on the transformation team, so I was able to get it sorted out as part of the transformation budget, multi-million-pound budget. I didn't have multi-millions to spend, believe me. I wish, but I had a decent pot, and because it was supporting transformation, and the business was committed to making this £50 million transformation project succeed, they gave me that budget. I had to fight for some of it and say, actually, yeah, you need to spend this much on a video, and they were going, oh my god, really? Yeah. But then I could see the investment from it and how it's engaged with people, much better than a simple email would have been that you couldn't measure.
Okay.
So it's all about return on investment.
Cool. Brilliant. Thanks, Kate. Final question. Just one piece of advice for communicators tasked with change.
Well, change is a big, scary thing, and it can really overwhelm people. So my top bit of advice would be to keep it simple. Keep your language simple. For me, it's always about, does it pass the pub test? So if you're down the pub, or not, if you're normally down the pub and you're talking to your mate, and your mate says, what are you doing? You wouldn't talk to him in business language or business jargon. So don't talk to your colleagues like that at all. Keep it simple. Keep it really easy to understand, and you'll get much more advocacy.
Great, fantastic. So, Kate, thanks very much for your help this morning. It's been fascinating. I would particularly like to thank you because I know it's your birthday today, so thank you for giving your time up from being stuck indoors to being stuck indoors.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. As I said, the transcript of the recording will be available on our website next week with a blog, so feel free to share with your colleagues and peers. And our next SQL Presents seminar will be the first week of December, and details of that will be announced shortly. In the meantime, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it. Bye.